About to get started. It's just another 2 minutes. We're trying to get some people inside, so we start in another 2 minutes. One. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All my panelists are already here. Mic on नहीं यार इसको करो. ये वाला चल रहा है? No? Now it's on. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All our panelists are already on the dais. This session is going to be chaired by Dr. William Young. And Bill Young is very well known in Pakistan. I'll just briefly go through his profile. Dr. Young is the lead water resource management specialist with the World Bank's Global Water Practice based in Washington, D.C. And Dr. Young currently leads lending operations in Pakistan on integrated water source management in Baluchistan, national water sector capacity building, and national hydro modernization. And Dr. Young has also led the river basin modeling work at Murray-Darling Basin Authority in Australia that guided the development of the first basin plan, a major component of the Australian water reform process. We welcome you, Dr. Young, once again. I would like you to make some opening statements, and then we take it from there.
Thank you for the kind introduction, and welcome everybody. Could I have the slides up, please? You'll notice from the brief CV that I don't know anything about dams, so I'm not quite sure why I was asked to come and talk to you. So I've entitled my talk here, Lies, Dam Lies and Statistics, to just sort of underscore that I don't necessarily profess expertise here. But somewhere I think there's a colleague who may be coming who's one of our lead energy specialists in Pakistan who can correct me where I get wrong. Now, does this contraption work? This works? Okay, so I'm just going to give a brief overview. I was asked to set a bit of a global picture on dams, so I just want to walk you through just some facts and figures around the state of dams. The first graph here is a graph that shows the decade by decade, the number of dams, and then in the dark, and then the additional dams that are added each decade. So you can see that we have been getting more and more dams. There is a projection that there will be significantly more dams into the future. And the bottom right-hand graph shows just those additional dams. And you can see there was a big boom in dam building globally in the 60s and 70s. And then there's been a big downturn, but there is an expectation that there will be significant new dams. There's around 60,000 large dams, classified as large dams. I won't go into the details of that globally, but about 800,000 dams in total. So that sort of sets the scene on numbers, but number of dams is, of course, only one measure of dams. This is where they are, the blue ones being those that, in terms of what's happening into the future, those that are under construction and those that are planned. And you can see where the geography of where that is happening. In China, in Africa, and along the spine of the Himalaya, up through the mountain region there where there's great potential. Dams are often multi-purpose. I'm not going to go too much into the nature of dams, but this sort of shows you by number on the left-hand graph the purpose, whether single or multiple purpose, and whether they're primarily or solely for flood control, for hydropower, irrigation, or other uses. And you can see that by number of dams, irrigation is definitely the dominant number of dams. But if you look here at the growth curve on the right, in terms of those for hydropower, you can see a steady increase in the generating capacity and the capacity that we're adding decade by decade. And that tends to be a bit more of the focus globally now, I think, is more dams for hydropower than for irrigation. This is just then a look at that hydropower in terms of what's the installed capacity around the moment and what the projections are out for 2050, and geographically, region by region of the world, what the the level of expansion is in terms of what's planned and what's under construction. And you can see that, again, that in terms of hydropower, we've got this big projection of increases in Africa, but also in Asia. I wanted to touch not just on dam construction, but there is an increasing trend in some parts of the world on dam removal, on decommissioning of dams. And this looks at the global distribution of the removal of about 4,000 dams. And you can see that they are in the places, of course, where dams have been there for longer, in North America and Europe. And there are, what that shows then decade by decade. If you look at what sort of dams are being removed, this will tell you a little bit about the trend in terms of the height of these dams. Are they tall or small dams? And typically, yes, we are getting more and more removals, but they do tend to be the smaller dams in terms of the height of the dam wall. And this will tell you, this right-hand one tells you about the age. Are they new dams or old dams? And, you know, these slides, I'm happy to make them available if people want to sort of go over, and the references are there where I've taken these figures from. But you can see the majority of these dams are dams that are around sort of 80 to 100 years old that are being decommissioned. There are a number though, that are much younger dams, and some that are a lot older historical dams. A couple of other graphs to put up at the global scale in terms of what is happening to the total storage that we have in reservoirs globally. We are increasing the storage, but that is going to level out when you start to look at it as we go into the future. And when you put that on a per capita basis, because the population globally is growing, the blue curve the blue curve shows you what happens to per capita storage globally. We are adding more storage, but the number of people is growing faster, so the amount of storage per capita, which is not necessarily that most useful measure, but it does show you, in a way, if you like, we're not keeping up. And the orange then says, if you adjust that for sedimentation, because the reservoirs are sedimenting around the world, particularly as we build them in more active mountain areas, then the drop-off is even sharper in terms of the active storage that we have per capita. This is a graph I put together, which is in our Pakistan water report, that tries to get us to move away a little bit from these measures of storage per capita to recognise that we build storages to regulate, in terms of water supply, to regulate the variability of flow. The more variability you have on your input flow, the more storage you need in your system. So there is a relationship, you can see globally, between the variability of annual flow, so this is to manage interannual variability, which is a bit different from managing seasonal patterns of flow, and the amount of storage you need as a fraction of the mean annual flow. And so places like Australia have a lot more storage because they have a lot more flow variability to manage. It also then depends on the economics of the variability that you can accept in your demands on the supply side, depending what you're using the water for. So it's important, of course, to say something about the World Commission on Dams. This was something initially proposed by the World Bank in 1995 and conducted not by the bank, but conducted from 98 to 2000. The bank certainly had a role in it, but it was not driven by the bank. It assessed the effectiveness of large dams and developed best practice guidelines for construction management based on a review of the evidence and stakeholder consultation. Produced two reports. The one that's perhaps gained the most interest is the second report that contained internationally acceptable criteria for building and managing dams with a strong focus on social and environmental justice. The reception to this report, I think it's fair to say, was mixed. Many civil society organisations generally welcomed the advice, but there are other stakeholder groups whose reactions range, let's say, from lukewarm to hostile. But I think that in the 20 years since, if you look through the literature, you could say that this work emerges as a remarkable institution. It was bold, it was creative and radical, and is often credited with exposing the political nature of dam construction. So to something about those impacts, it's only a short time here, and there's a huge literature around the impacts of dams as well, but I wanted to give a couple of views, firstly, of the global picture of the environmental impacts of dams. This is actually a picture from a paper earlier this year on the impacts of water resource development more generally, and the colour codes on the scale are different types of impacts. So the red ones are around the degree of fragmentation when we break rivers up through structures, and the orange one is when we modify the flow regime, which we do through both structures and diversions as well. So you can see that the places where there's been a huge construction of dams historically, there has been a very high impact on some of these environmental aspects of our river systems. And you can see a similar sort of pattern when you look at the social impacts in terms of the number of people downstream who have been negatively impacted by the construction of dams. So what's happened in the 20 years since the World Commission on Dams? I think the debate has certainly continued, and as far as I can tell, if anything, it's intensified rather than abated. Dam construction did slow in that decade, but we are now expecting to see a significant increase globally in dam building, particularly in Africa. And I think that's partly driven by the increasing climate change concerns around use of fossil fuels. The bank, in response to this, I think, adopted what was seen as a high-risk, high-reward strategy, and our mantra shifted from doing dams right, a more technical focus, through to doing the right dams in terms of planning and choosing dams and the impact mitigation. But globally, it's clear to see that many of the new dams are not being planned according to the Commission's approach, and thus the controversies around the negative impacts continue. And as I pointed out before, there is an increase in dam removal, partly due to the age of structures, partly safety, partly redundancy, but also partly response to social and environmental impacts. And some key literature there for people who want to follow up. Just flagging a couple of, three things that are coming out around helping to mitigate or manage the environmental impacts. This was work from the Nature Conservancy in 2015, what they called Hydropower by Design, so very much focused on hydropower dams. And they used at the bottom there this, what they call a mitigation or a hierarchy of managing the impacts, from avoiding to minimising to offsetting, which is, I think, getting adopted quite a few places for a sequential way to look at minimising the impacts. And then we might hear more from this later. WWF 2015 came out with a number of sort of 10 propositions around how to do dams better. And I won't go through them all because we may hear something from WWF on these, I'm not sure. And then, excuse me, just then the World Bank Group this year released some guidance for the private sector on environmental flows around hydropower dams. And it provides, it looks into our safeguards arrangements, both the old and the new, and how to apply these. It gives guidance on different e-flow and assessment methods, and again it uses this impact mitigation hierarchy and recommends steps for implementation and adaptive management. So I'll leave it there. I hope I haven't run over time too much, and happy to be part of the discussion. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. I think this is very well done and sets the stage. I'd like to invite my next speaker, Mr. Sardar Mohammad Tariq. Sardar Tariq is the Executive Director and CEO of Pakistan Water Partnership, and he's also served as the Regional Chair of Global Water Partnership. He has over 52 years of experience, and I think I don't need to read from this. Sardar Tariq is probably our best dam engineer. He's the one who has basically been involved with Mangla as well as with the projects of Tarbela, besides serving as member water in WAPDA. So if anybody is well-versed with dams, he's well-versed with dams. I'm glad that he's got a topic which should shake him up and shake us up a little bit. The topic which we have for him is the state of, I gave a dam about dams, and here is why. So Sardar sir, please come and tell us, why do you give a damn about dams and why do you do that?
Before coming here, Dr. Perez warned us that he's not going to give a second more than my time. So no more slides. So I thought from equilibrium, so I won't be taking much time anyway. I think we start from the basics. Why we have water infrastructure? The answer is very simple, for two very reasons. Water is not always available water is not available when you need it, and water is not available where you need it. In both cases, naturally, you need to have water infrastructure. Now, if we go back to Pakistan's perspective, a lot of people will be saying that in 50s and 60s, we had more than 5,000 to 6,000 cubic meter water per person against the threshold value of about 1,700. But they don't know the season-wise. If you look into season-wise, of course we had much more in the summer season, but in winter season we had much less, even per capita. The moment you have 80% of the total water available in few months, summer months, and only 20% is available in winter, which is our staple crop that we grow, our food. And the first hydraulic shock that we got was when India stopped the water of three eastern rivers. That was the first hydraulic shock that we had, because we had the only economic base was our agro base, and that was our food basket in east, which was being irrigated from the three eastern rivers. So naturally, we were at the verge of water wars. And it was with the intervention of the World Bank that the treaty was signed, but signed after a decade of negotiations. It was not an easy thing to do that. Well, we surrendered the three eastern rivers to India. Then came a big problem for us, that we have to develop the world's largest civil engineering works ever awarded in the history by getting water of the western rivers to the east. A challenge that we had to complete in 10 years. And we have to build storages just to replace that water of three eastern rivers. So we developed Mangla, and we developed Tarbela, and regulatory storage at Chashma. And the network of canals, interconnecting river canals, transfer from one river to other, from western rivers to eastern rivers. Prior to this, with a population of something between 30 and 35 million, Pakistan was almost begging, having a dietary supplement from America under PL 480. We were short of our food requirement. But this treaty, in other words, was a blessing for us also, that we have to develop this infrastructure, water infrastructures, and have to transfer water from the western rivers to eastern rivers, and has to establish a network of canals and main canals, secondary and tertiary. And if you add up the length of that, that is more than 2.5 times the circumference of the earth. Just see the huge, gigantic task that we have to do. And that played a major role in economic development of Pakistan. The disparity that we had, a very large of 80 to 20% availability between summer and winter, was reduced to a great extent. And even today, with a population of 220 million and probably 230 million, we are meeting our requirement to a great extent. And at the time we've been exporting food, also food items. That was the role that water infrastructure played. And look at the benefit of that infrastructure role that we had. Not only that we became self-sufficient in our food, the manpower that we trained, the human resource development on these projects. Human resource development in these projects were happening at the time when the petroeconomy was developing in the Middle East. And they needed a skilled labor force. We produced the best dozer operator, dumper operator, crane operators, scrapers, surveyors, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers. And there was a market to absorb them. And I wrote a paper way back for World Bank that the remittances that we got over the next 10 years from this labor force were more than money we spent on this development of this infrastructure. And with the cheap hydropower that we produce on these dams, more than 3,000 industries were established and the number kept on increasing. That provided a boost to our export industries. But now the things are reversing. We have come to a stage where the population growth, industrial demand is increasing, agricultural demand is increasing, domestic and municipal demands are increasing, environmental demand is increasing. And with the sedimentation, we are losing storages very fast. And you'll be surprised to know that over 500,000 tons of sediments are deposited every day in Tarbela Reservoir. Shocking figure. And that is because the height of the young Himalayans and the velocity and speed that we get of the rivers. A lot of erosion takes place then. We are getting short of water. We need to develop those, replace those storages as soon as possible. Otherwise, the seasonal transfer that we used to do, we need to have at least 40% storage capacity against our total inflow. Unfortunately, our storage capacity is only 9.5%. So looking into future, I think we have to develop storages to replace what we have lost, and we have to develop storages for the additional water that we need to meet our growing demand. Thank you very much. I'll close it here. I won't go any further.
Thank you very much, Sardar Sahab. I'm sorry we're a little constrained on time, so maybe on the rebuttal you can make some more comments. My next speaker is going to be Mr. Umar Kareem Saab. Let me introduce him. Mr. Umar Kareem is working with FAO as project management consultant under the Management and Coordination Unit, and his works have been on the Sindh Barrage Improvement and Sindh Agriculture Growth. Currently serving as member of the Sindh Water Resources Institutional Assessment Mission for review of irrigation reform process. Mr. Kareem will speak on the other side of the coin. Mr. Kareem, are you around? Please, welcome. 10 minutes.
So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Assalamu alaikum. This is Umar Kareem. Please don't take me as an expert. I'm not an expert at all. I'm just a layman, or you can call me a pseudo-layman. I'm a student of this water resources management subject, and it's a huge subject. The problem nowadays, whenever I look at the problems nowadays, it forces me to go back in history and check how did we started our water resources management. So it is prehistoric, it is 200 years ago, some local rulers, they started digging canals, and then British came in and they did some studies and they did some surveys. And those surveys, after those surveys, they decided to construct Sakhar Barrage. So when this Sakhar Barrage was constructed, at every canal, they kept a specific cropping intensity. Cropping intensity, let me simplify it. If I have 100 acres of land, so under this irrigation system, I was given permission to cultivate a specific area in a season. So for Kharifs, on Nara Canal, say for example, we had 37%, and for Rabi, we used to have 55%. And at that time, we did not have any storages, and departments were working very well, everything was going efficiently, and the water resources managers used to keep checks on those cropping intensities. The purpose of keeping those intensities or fixing some water allowance was, first, to maintain equity in water distribution, because everybody knew there were some calculations, there were some estimations that water is less and cropping season is specific, and we will not be able to supply water for 100% area. And second reason was to avoid natural resource-based degradation. I mean, it's a Newton law, it's in ninth grade, and we study in 9th grade, that every action has its equal and opposite reaction. Once there is a natural system, floods come in, then there is seed, people sow crop, and they harvest on the moisture. And then there is an organized system where you are supplying water throughout the year to some specific area. So sure, there were fears of having some drawbacks or impacts. And those drawbacks were land degradation, water logging, and salinity. So after independence, we built Kotri Barrage, we built Guddu Barrage, there were further developments upstream, and then we had this Indus Water Treaty, and we built Mangla Dam, and then we had Tarbela Dam. So dams played a part. That uncertainty in water flow, river is directly coming after glacier melt or monsoon rains, was provided a buffer where we can maintain the timing of water inflow. So after that dams period, I fear, I may be wrong in that, experts may correct me, that I fear that we loosened up our controls on those cropping intensities. So the most recent reference I find is revised irrigation manual, operation and maintenance manual by Aziz Rajput Saab in 1992-93, in which the 35% is taken to 80%, or somewhere it is taken to 90%. Then I find reference of Seven Barrage feasibility report in 2004-05. They have also done some work and assessed those cropping intensities. And the most recent is 2012 Water Sector Task Force by Friends of Democratic Pakistan. And in that report, they have written that we have now 170% cropping intensities. So I think these times, we kept on intensifying our agriculture. That not only started creating problems for our environment, for our equity, for our reliability, and also put stress on our system. And today we are facing this problem. Let me give you an example of Manchar Lake. When British were constructing Sakhar Barrage, after surveys they found that whole right bank is an isolated area. So if we'll keep on supplying irrigation canal water to that right bank of canals, this whole area will be degraded. So they dug up a channel called MNV drain, and they outfall that channel into Manchar Lake, which was a depression at that time. In 1966, there was an LIP report, and in that LIP report, they have noticed that this model is not going to work. We need to do some intervention. We need to have a barrage. We need to give fresh water supplies to Manchar Lake, and we need to put siphon on that drainage directly coming to, because it's agriculture drainage, it is bringing in salts, it sometimes is bringing in hazardous problems. Again, in 2004-05, we worked on that barrage, In 1982, there was a master plan on right bank. Again, they said that this problem is now getting serious, and Manchar is being contaminated. That drainage water coming to Manchar, which is started in 1932, has now created a problem. And still today, we only see activism, which in actual is a good thing. The activism should be there so that we may notice what is happening. Somebody should take notice. But at least, because of these continuous agriculture practices, we have not only damaged our soils, or we have also damaged our environment, and we are creating serious problems for our future. So, if we check the agriculture statistics, I see cultivated area and crop productivity of Sindh Punjab both increasing since last 20 years. So every time we hear that water is short, how is cultivated areas increasing? Or how is crop productivity increasing of cash crops? And finally, when I discuss it with my seniors, I find that they say that there is some problem with data. Okay, fine, just leave it. Why number of sugar mills are increasing in Sindh and Punjab? Why number of cotton ginning mills increasing? So we are living in an era where I am wearing this smartwatch which is telling me that you are continuously sitting, you must get up and go, and we are unable to manage our data. So building a dam is only 10% of problem, but the bigger problems are correction in our water resources management. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for finishing on time. My next speaker is Hamad Naqi Khan Saab from WWF. I don't need to introduce Hamad for too long, I think it's going to be a very brief introduction. Hamad Naqi is the DG of WWF Pakistan since 2014. Very well known within Pakistan. Anything to do with environment, you can always count on Hamad Naqi on that. He is going to talk about alternatives to dam. I just want to warm him up with a statement from Prime Minister Modi that blood and water do not flow together. And as he speaks, I hope he keeps that in mind also. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, very good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Pervez, for a nice introduction. Let me, at the onset, clarify that I won't be speaking on dams, but my plan is to, in this brief talk, to share the importance of nature-based solution and a program which we plan to, inshallah, launch soon, which will enable us to use nature-based solutions in our development paradigm. WWF, Bill shared a report. We are not against dam. Considering the storage capacity, we strongly believe that we need to improve our storage capacity, but we have a problem when dams are portrayed as the solution for all the water challenges that are being faced in this country. We do not support that. By qualification, I'm an engineer, and we've been trained to find engineering hard infrastructure solutions for literally all the development activities and also for any project related to address the natural hazards. Things are changing. It's not that paradigm anymore. People are talking about innovative solutions. People are talking about innovative solutions to address the challenges, particularly in the context of finding climate resilience. The title, I've taken, Bill, I've taken this from the World Bank report. This is the World Bank and WRI study. So you feel satisfied when a DFI like the World Bank talks about integrating green and gray infrastructure, which was not the case lately. So quickly, this all started after the 2010 super floods. We know the extent and the damage which was caused by this natural disaster. There were thousands of people who lost their lives, millions of dollars of property damage. Now, this was for the first time that there was a talk about finding some integrated approach to address natural hazards. The government accepted the request from Ramsar mission to visit, those sites and come up with a solution. So there was a high-level delegation from Ramsar. They visited, and the crux of their finding was that along with the hardcore engineering structures, we need to find eco-based adaptation. We need to find soft green structures. We need to find, instead of fighting with nature, we need to treat nature as one of the strongest allies, Again, referring to Bill's tweet, there was a consistent drought in Balochistan, and everybody was talking, oh my God, people are suffering because of the drought. And there was rain. And the next day, the headline of all the media newspapers was, rains play havoc in Balochistan. So once it's drought, now it's rains. So we are still struggling to find a natural, like a blessing to go in our favor. Instead of, we always treat, whether it's drought, whether it's rain, that it's a disaster. We need to, find a solution for that disaster. So one of the recommendations was that to send a high-level delegation to China, because Yangtze had, implemented a program where they linked their natural wetlands. And these are the two wetlands, by the way. And there are a couple of them, but I'm just mentioning Dongting Lake and Pyong Lake. Now, the cost of their, the whole program was $1.6 billion. Three Gorges Dam, the cost was $45 billion. The storage capacity of both the programs is more or less the same. So that's where, the two wetlands, which were linked to the main river stretch, they require less maintenance cost as well. So that's so the people went there, including technocrats, politicians, bureaucrats, and they saw from their own eyes that there are solutions which are available and where we can blend green and gray infrastructure. So this is just one example. A program was developed. We presented it to we wanted to submit it to Green Climate Fund. It's a big program, $150 million. The ministries, Ministry of Water, Ministry of Climate Change, it took us 2 years to convince them. It took us 2 years to get NOCs and endorsement from 21 provincial departments. Now they are all on board, including irrigation, agriculture, environment, all the departments. And it was presented to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister said it's not just flood risk management, it's not just reviving wetlands. It will be beneficial to recharge the dwindling aquifers of Pakistan. So he called it Recharge Pakistan. So now the Prime Minister, and by the way, 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister, announced his 5 environmental priorities, and Recharge Pakistan is one of the environmental priority that this government is taking forward. So that's we strongly feel once it's through, it has already been submitted to the Green Climate Fund. It will be a game changer. Quickly, there will be potential sites. This is just one example. My colleague Umar talked about the disasters of Manchar Lake. Obviously, in the east is River Indus, west is Kirthar Hills, and the hill torrents. That's the major, source of fresh water flows in Manchar Lake. And on the south is Lucky Hills. Now, MNV or the Aral Lucky Canal, so there are water channels, and they take water from Indus also, and vice versa. If there is more water in Manchar, it goes into but the whole program in one of these sites, like Manchar Lake, it's about bioengineering, it's about watershed management, it's about floodplains management, it's about remodeling of the couple of water channels on the east side of Manchar Lake. So just through a blend of, again, green and gray infrastructure, there's a possibility that we can have less environmental impacts, more ecological benefits, more opportunities for improving the livelihood of the communities, and also good for environment, migratory birds, fishing, recharging aquifers. So, and same is the case with the hill torrents of DG Khan or in DI Khan, or so there are, the departments have come up with almost 20 sites, and we'll be shortlisting as part of the feasibility 6 sites. So this, as I said earlier, this is a program where we will be using nature-based solutions. The implementing agency will be the Federal Ministry of Water Resources through the provincial departments. By the way, it's totally aligned with National Flood Protection Plan 4. This was the first time that your flood protection plan talks about nature-based solution. It always talks, in the past talked about dikes, bunds, ये बना दें, इधर ऊंची कर दें, ये इधर सड़क बना दें, उसको और ऊंचा कर दो, मट्टी डाल दो, पत्थर डाल दो. For the first time, the document talks about nature-based solution and eco-based adaptation. So this is like a program, once it's through, it will be presented to the GCF board in maybe in a 2 months' time. We are pretty confident, inshallah, this program, will be through. I will not go into the details, but I just wanted to flag because this is the time, this would provide us an opportunity where for the first time, we will be relying on nature-based solution along with the pure, hardcore gray infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hamad, for an excellent presentation. My next speaker is Afia Salam. She is going to talk about what about me, the people's perspective. Let me just briefly run through Afia. Afia, I think this write-up here really doesn't represent what you're doing these days. I mean, she's very much into climate change and other places. With a master's degree in geography from University of Karachi, Ms. Afia Salam is a journalist, copywriter, and a media development specialist in climate change, environment, reporting, and media ethics. And she is also the first cricketer, not a cricketer, but a cricket journalist. And I also know that she's also served on the ATC, which is the air traffic control. She's served a job over there also, so she's a very diversified lady. And currently, I think Afia is one of our lead activists. I mean, Afia is everywhere, anywhere where somebody needs to be there. So I welcome Afia over there. Thank you.
Thank you, that's very kind of you. I mean, you mentioned things that are part of my past life, actually, cricket and air traffic control. So actually, when I was told that I would be part of this panel, so I told Simi that, I'm not an expert and I really feel overwhelmed because the other people are experts and I'm not. And I'm just a journalist who has a special interest in this subject because of my academic background of geography. But she firmly told me that, no, you will be representing the people. So then who are we, the people? We, the people, are those who are these recipients of the benevolence of those who give us water to drink, who bring us water, which is a fundamental human right anyway. And something that is not just written in the United Nations Human Rights Declaration, but is corroborated by the Constitution of Pakistan, though that promise extends actually to the provision of clean drinking water to the citizens. But do we, the people, have it? Even after 7 decades of existence of our country, this is an answer that I don't need to give over here, because not all the people have the same answer. Those receiving a very copious supply from the flowing rivers and canals and using it to flood their fields view it with a different lens. And those people who are traveling below Kotri or over that bridge, and I do that pretty frequently because of, Dr. Saab has called it activism, I say development work. I go on that route very frequently. And for most months of the year, we who pass that way, we are searching for that mighty Indus, which seems to have become just a part of our folklore. Because we see water in it only for a few months. Otherwise, there's sand, there you can see, cattle crossing from one side to the other. And what about the tail-end farmers from the once bustling, growing delta, who seem to be in a bind continuously searching for new ways to survive in the face of onslaught from the sea, which is eating up their, their habitat. So then we, the people, have questions. We seek answers about the inequities and injustices of distribution, about the inefficiencies of management, about the disconnect between the givers and the takers, and about the lack of their input in decision-making, which has brought us to a point where we are becoming mired in conspiracy theories and in suspicions against each other. And then water, we must remember, also has its own SDG, a Sustainable Development Goal, the Goal 6, within which are covered all aspects related to this finite but very essential commodity. And probably, now is the time that we need to look at water as a commodity rather than a free resource available for those who can use it, misuse it, and abuse it. And that is why those inequities, become very, very entrenched. And we need to look forward to a future which will not be compromised by the fear about water conflicts. So we, the people in the fields, in impoverished communities, small towns and villages, have an understanding about water that needs to be heard. And when you start hearing the people of those areas, please also wear a gender lens. Because in this country, it's the women who are the water managers. They bear that burden which the society has placed on them. And they bear it out of not choice. They lose their lives, or sometimes they give birth. Sometimes that life survives, sometimes it doesn't, because they cannot postpone the task of fetching water. So that gender element is very, very important. We have in the audience Mr. Shahid Saeed, who's the CEO of Indus Earth. And why I insist on bringing in the gender element is because one of the projects in a very, very arid part of Sindh, Kohistan, which we launched for exactly what Hamad was just showing us, the water, the hill torrents running down the Kirthar Hills into the Kohistan region. So we wanted to capture that into, and make it more available. And we titled that project as Water for Women. And Dr. Bakshal Rashari, I think, is also here, who's also familiar with that project. And we were asked, why are you titling it as Water for Women? It's going to be available for everybody. Yes, it is. But it's the woman who's going to go and fetch it anywhere. And she used to go and fetch it walking 3 times, maybe 4 times a day for 1.5 kilometers, bearing 14, 16 liters on her head or on her back. Physically, she, that compromised her health and all these things. So these are the things, these are the people whose voices need to be more strident. They need to demand what is their right, and they have to ask questions and demand answers. Much like in Sindh, we are proud that we have a person who said that I will not stay silent, and his name is Shahab Usto. And he sort of stirred the pot, and there are several things. He did not take the system, he didn't the inertia of the system. He did not compromise on it, and he made it move. He's brought in changes. So these are the things that citizen involvements are so important, which HISAR has done, and it has come up with a citizens' water policy, which should be seen as an entry point of a new kind of engagement where voices from the ground are heard and accepted as essential drivers of policy. So we, the people, we want what is just and equitable, nothing less, nothing more. Will the dams bring that justice and equity? Will infrastructure interventions be a boon or a bane? The way this one issue was peddled has completely hijacked the discourse on infrastructure like dams, placing the nature in an either-or binary. We need to get out of that. We, the people, need to be explained if dams are good, then what type of dams? Sindh, especially Lower Sindh, has been strident in its opposition to dams. But many small dams are being built because they are an infrastructure solution. Dams are a solution. I think Nasir Pamar was sitting over here, and you're also, yes. So they are part of a solution. So which type of dams? We need to explain to the people. So that heartburning goes away. We, the people, also have to be the spokesperson for the ecology that suffers, and the people inhabiting that habitat suffer along with it. So we, the people, need answers to know whether to wallow in despair or be uplifted by hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Afia. Now I come to my last speaker. Actually, Chairman Wapda was supposed to join us for some prior engagement. I think he was not able to come. My next speaker is going to be Shahid Ahmed. He's basically a civil engineer and has 32 years experience with resource planning and management, etc. And while we look forward to hearing more about hydropower from him, I think last year in October, I think that some of my Australian colleagues were there also, Don Blackmore particularly. We got some commitments, national commitments. The whole nation got together, and we also contributed a very large fund, crowd-funded. And that responsibility went out to the Supreme Court. That's the first time, I think, in the history of the world that a Supreme Court comes out and it takes this issue of water, it considered it so important. So a lot of commitments were made there, and a lot of projects were promised. In particularly, startup of 1 or 2 of the hydropower projects were promised over there. and people have a lot of questions. We would like, if not Chairman Wapda, but Shahid Sahab, for you to definitely update us. Where are we headed, especially from October 2018? What is WAPDA doing? Where do we stand on infrastructure generally and some of the commitments which were made with the Supreme Court at that time? Thank you.
Thank you, giving me time to present the status of the dams and hydropower projects currently we are doing in WAPDA. But I will take extra time for that.
No, I'm not going to give you extra time. 2 minutes, I'm going to reduce your 2 minutes. The reason is very simple. Chairman WAPDA should have been here to answer these questions.
Okay.
He's not here, I'm going to cut 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay. So please, presentation, please. So I just small presentation.
Somebody else?
Yeah.
Mr. Shahid's present.
Shahid Hamid. So water is life. We all know, learn a lot of things regarding Nexus. And I just want to say that the nations who develop and manage their water properly, they are successful nations. So we have to use it wisely, and so that we can save it, use it wisely, and okay.
Can we have the presentation, please?
So maybe we can start it without presentation. So we know that around 60% of population is dependent on agriculture, crops and livestock. And water is very limited, and we know that the variability of water in a year, and we have the cycle, that sometime in a year, like in 78, 79, we got around 183 million acre feet water, while in 2001 and 2 we got minimum, that is 99 million acre feet water. So this shows that there is a variable water. Sometime when it's 180 million acre feet, we are in flood situation, and when it is below 90, we are in drought situation. So this situation demands that we should have some storage capacity, carryover storage capacity, so that we can store when we are in flood situation, and we can utilize it when we are in drought situation. So we need extra additional replacement reservoirs so that we can transfer water from inter-season to inter-year. And we use that water 10 daily basis. Yeah. And next, please. Yeah. Yeah. So this shows the variability in a year and in a cycle. And one more thing is that we have 20% water in winter, while 80% water is in summer years, summer times. So that requires that we need water to be stored, and that water can be utilized when there is shortage of water. The one more additional thing I want to share, that Peter Lefnick prepared a water sector investment plan in 1970s, and it was a clear message that we need a dam after every 10 years. So this is already known. The present reservoirs are losing their capacity due to sedimentation. Almost 27% capacity has been lost. That is around 5 million acre feet capacity. So this graph, we know that the the storage capacity is decreasing due to sediments, whereas per capita water is also decreasing, while population is increasing. So up to 2018, we developed only 6,919 megawatt power, while 13 million acre-feet storage. In 2018, we developed around 2,500 megawatt power, and it was we were in third in the world who have generated this much power in 2018. I just want to share the benefit of Tarbela Dam, because the single dam has generated so much benefits. Yeah. Water in average 9 million acre-feet storage annually it gives, and it irrigates around more than 4 million acre areas. The total releases so far is around 378 million acre-feet water, and revenue generated from that is 378 billion rupees. While in power sector, we got revenue of around 523 billion. So I come to the new dams. So this much potential we have on Indus Basin, Indus River. Just see the Shiok Dam to Tonsa, we have more than 8,000 feet drop, and we have the potential of around 41,000 megawatt on Indus River and storage of 33 million acre feet. So in 2019, we have population of about 207 million, and in 2050 it will be 312 million. So we have a demand increase in food and energy and water. So additional water, we need around 70 million acre feet water. From where it will come? So by storages, by conservation, and by management. So we have a plan that we need around 40 million acre feet storage, and we have to conserve through high efficiency irrigation system, through lining of canals and demand side managements. So these are the different projects. Like until 2025, we want to generate around 5 million acre feet storage and around 4,600 megawatt through Mohammed, Nagaj, Nalong, Kurram, these dams. And similarly, we have 2030 plan and 2050 plan. So I just want to share the status of the projects. Mohammed Dam project, we have already selected consultant and the contractor for works. They are on site since June, and we will complete this project by 2024. This project will give us around 800 megawatt power and 1.2 million acre feet storage, as well as it will save Nushara from flooding and local irrigation to the tribal area, as well as water supply to Peshawar. For this project, we have a financial plan. Sir, only 1 minute, sir. We need around 259 billion rupees, and we requested government to provide us only 17 billion rupees annually. 29 billion rupees will be equity of WAPDA, while remaining will be generated from local banks, around 33 billion, and foreign banks. Basha Dam project, we have already invited the proposals for consultants as well as bids, and both are under evaluation, and within a month or 2 months, it will be, they will be moved to the site. For this project, we have a financial plan. We need around, we divided the project in 2 parts, dam part and the powerhouse part. First phase, we have started work for the dam. We need around 480 billion. We requested government to give us 27 billion rupees annually from PSDP, while 100 billion will be equity donated by, contributed by WAPDA, and the remaining funds will be from the local and foreign banks, and for that we will also issue bonds. So this is for powerhouse. After 3 years, we will also float this powerhouse project. So the punchline is WAPDA is committed to develop water storages because we direly need it with your cooperation, with the help of the nation, and we need your support and we need your cooperation to do this work. So I can request that everybody should come up in the morning and donate 10 rupees to the dams fund. I just want to share the status of the funding. The funding so far is around 13 billion rupees. It's with the Supreme Court of Pakistan. WAPDA requested Supreme Court of Pakistan to invest in some other schemes. When we need it, we can ask and we can request, then that money will be taken for this project. So that money is safe and it is with the Supreme Court and it will be available as per requirements. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, sir.
Thank you. Well done. Thanks a lot, Shahid Sahab. I'm glad the money is safe. We were all getting a bit worried. What I would like to do now is I would like to ask from my colleagues back if there are any questions, and can you put them up on the screen? Okay, these are 3 questions. If you can look at them, and Bill, if you can lead this discussion part, who you want to sort of ask them to answer. Is our economic growth linked directly to water management? If so, do you know what percentage? Do you think that the waterborne diseases are related to water? Coming back to awareness, most people in this room are experts, are in this field. We are made aware. What about spreading this awareness to the people? I think these are relevant questions. You want to answer the second? Who else? You would like to make a comment on what? Anybody else? Okay, I'd like to try to answer the first one, and I'll do that later. Let's have that first over here. Please go ahead. Umar
So,
Saab.
whenever I get depressed working in the field of water resources, we are working on analytics and GIS and reports and reading and problems and issues. So I have a refresher report in my drawer. I just take it out and I read. The report title is What Countries' Experiences with Water Resources Management. And its Pakistan chapter is written by Sai Khalid Muhtadullah Saab and Shamsul Buk Saab. In 1992, they pointed out that now it's the time to take care of our sewages because we are now spending too much on our health. The sewage water is now mixing up with drinking water and it is creating serious problems. That report is an outstanding paper for just for reading, to have an idea what problems we are facing. And whatever is written in 1992, today we are facing it. So yes, waterborne diseases are linked with water pollution, mismanagement, and all other things.
Thank you. Wait a minute. Hamad?
Just to add, we came up with a report called Pakistan Waters at Risk. I think you take any study done by UNICEF or WHO or any other, the Public Institute of Public Health, you'll see that half of the hospital admissions are just because of waterborne diseases. Infant mortality rate, one of the highest in the region, is just because of the poor water quality. So the point is, and I think the policy and decision makers should need to understand that, you ignore one sector, you increase the burden of another sector. So if you're not addressing the water quality issue, the people are suffering, productivity hours are being lost, people are dying, and health costs are increasing. The hospitals are not capable to address all this. The pharma industry is one of the thriving industry in this country, despite all the economic challenges, because people need medicine. People are still buying medicines, and there's a mushroom growth of, small pharmaceutical companies. So I think this is a proven fact. Everybody is aware of that you are ignoring one sector and you are just playing with the public health.
Thank you. Afia, you'll have a-
So I would just like to add, there was this panel discussion in LUMS last year where Dr. Fauzia Waqar had made a presentation. And when we talk of waterborne diseases, we are usually thinking in terms of diarrhea, cholera, etc. And what she presented was horrific, that the incidence of stunting starts at the fetal stage. And it is irreversible because at that time, because of the impure water that the mother is consuming, the child is already stunted. So that is something, that is very, very alarming. That was in her presentation.
Thank you. Shah sir.
I just want to share about Lahore city. Lahore was developed around Ravi River. Once it was a full river, and it's all aquifer under that Lahore city. We pump water for that population, we get the sweet water. Now when the river is not flowing, rather it is fed with the sewage water of Lahore. Now the all contaminated water is moving towards the center of the city and the water is almost polluted. The solution lies is that we should treat water and throw into the rivers, and we should develop 2 or 3 lakes around Lahore, so that there should be a waterfront, clean water, and that water when seeps into the aquifer, it will clean up and give clean water to the Lahore city.
Thank you. I'm going to now move to the floor. Let's take 4 questions. One hand here, one in the back, 2, 3, and one in the end, 4. So I have 4 questions. Let's go ahead first, yeah. Can I have the mic here, please?
I never heard anyone, none of you talked about reforestation, because if you reforest the catchments, I mean, you're increasing the soak and trickle effect. That's a form of storage. I never heard that from any one of you guys.
So,
And terracing in the watershed area of Manchur Lake. That's all about, watershed management is addressing deforestation and reforestation.
sir, I may answer this, sir. Sir, regarding this Mangla Dam, right when we have planned this project, we have a feasibility study for watershed management of the river. And the sediments, it was estimated, now it has been reduced due to implementation of a continuous watershed management by WAPDA in Mangla catchment. It's less than half of the design sedimentation capacity.
Thank you.
So life has been increased for that.
Let's keep it as a question. No comments, just a question.
I have the mic, thank you. My name is Zishan, I'm from Lead, Pakistan. A very interesting panel. I was looking for this discussion the whole day. We have heard from agriculture, voices from the community, the government, environment and nature aspect of that, and what our forefathers did, what they had to do to ensure food security in the country as well as manage the water shock.
Let's have the question.
Yes, thank you. My question is, do we really need to invest that much water in our agriculture to ensure food security, and do we need agriculture as a big contributor to our economy, or do we need to look at other areas in which we can shift or transform our economy into?
Bill, whoever wants to take it from here. Yeah.
So I think it's a very important question, and
Yes. That is what we are trying to do.
Excuse
That
me,
is-
can we have it over here because you started first, and then you can just chip in. We are going to have 2 answers, so Hamad first and then, yeah, okay.
Okay, so I think that's the reason that we need to revisit our cropping pattern strategy. And I think as one of my colleagues mentioned about why do we need 80 sugar mills? Why, we are bringing so many area under sugarcane? Is this does it link to food security to have X million hectares under wheat, Y million hectares under rice, and Z million hectares under sugarcane? Nobody has done, the cost-benefit analysis, and people just talk about food security. So I think it's important, considering water, we need to ensure that we improve the water productivity, not just the irrigation efficiency or, bringing more area and, improving the efficiency through lining of canals. Maybe that's required, but water productivity, what kind of crops, which area, otherwise the similar monocrop culture, we have been witnessing and we have seen the results.
Thank you. No, go ahead if you have something to say.
So, sir, that is what we are trying to do. But problem is, if we are doing conservation, the water saved at farm level does not goes back and adds into the system. That is again used to increase the crop intensity. So the problem is we need corrections in practices. We need to bring deterrence in water resources management. We need to bring laws. We need to have monitorings. Who is using how much? Like I have also worked in on-farm water management and lined almost 800 water courses. I have never seen a water course lined and saved water goes back to the IST. Soparco has done that study and they have done an impact assessment that the lining of water course is increasing the cultivation area. But again, that increasing that cultivation area is not increasing to food security. Malnutrition is increasing again. So these are serious questions we need to research on, we need to work on, we need to think.
Thank you. Sardar Tariq, you had something to say?
How we treating in this basin? We have carried out a comparative study of about 9 international basins. Now we looked into vulnerability of the basins. And this basin turned out to be one of the worst. From many, many indicators that we had were the forest cover, per capita availability, pollutions, you name anything, it had. So I think we have to look into this. And productivity. A very interesting figure that came out was that how much 1 cubic meter of water adds to your GDP. The world average came out to something like $8. Developed countries were getting something $30 to $40. That is a high value return that you get out of water. Even developing economies like Malaysia, Singapore and all that, they are going up to $10. You know what we were getting? 34 cents. That's where we stand. Even you look up to per cubic meter of productivity, and per unit of productivity, is one of the lowest in the world. So, as far as water management and water economy is concerned, I think a lot more efforts have to go into this space. That is the fact.
Thank you. We had the third question. Questions, please. No
Yes.
comments.
Namely, Shakil Shazaf and Quality Manager of Water Supply, Industrial Water. Sir, my question is 2 parts. First is just to mention there the water, sanitary water not to be treated and dumped in Ravi River in Karachi, dumped in seaside and not treated. It's ultimately is the polluted, whereas the polluted water is the TDS, carbonates and etc. as well as not treated waste. My second part is, Mr. Respected Speaker, just highlight and brief spirit of the construction of dam and demanding more money from government, World Bank and other countries. Sir, about after these 70 years, after this we constructed and build up only 7 or 8 or 25 small dam. Our neighboring countries, India is 350 water dams to be built.
No,
and China is 3,500. Sir, and the former Speaker Saqib Nisar appeal for the people just to donate and 1 month's salary or 2 days' salary. Why we not build a cheapest source of water as well as the generation of energy. Why? For the other is, Kalabagh Dam is spent of billion rupees. Not only feasibility work is on paper, not to be seen as physically or reality. What do you? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Let's have a brief rebuttal, a brief response. Whoever wants to give it. I think WAPDA is on the gunning line, you know. That's why we're asking your chairman. Please, go ahead.
So we have already concluded, or we have a consensus that we may need more storages. Like if we say, if we go to 1974, we have around 19 million acre-feet storage, which has been now reduced to around 30 million acre-feet water. So we need at least replacement reservoir. So just to maintain the water requirement of the ongoing irrigation system. So when we have decided that we need a dam, so we should contribute so that we can build it.
Okay, thank you. One last question, I think it was Bisharat, and there is also one here, okay. Bisharat, please go ahead first and then our friend here.
Yes, thank you, Professor. Just a question regarding the presentation by WAPDA on the strategy for increasing storage. And one aspect of that was conservation efforts through high efficiency irrigation systems and canal lining. But there's a limit to how far you can take those before it starts affecting the groundwater system, 2/3 of which is recharged by seepage from canals, rivers, and irrigation application. And the reason, and so I just wanted to consider if that trade-off between maintaining a groundwater sources through these sources of recharge and high efficiency irrigation and lining efforts, that trade-off has been considered in your plan. And the reason that's important, I feel, is because some would say that much more than building mega dams, using the our unconfined, largely consolidated aquifer as a source of storage for fresh water perhaps is more feasible and sustainable in the long run.
Thank you. And I think Sardar Tariq or from WAPDA, yeah. Sardar Sahib, you want to answer that? Quickly, yeah, we're running out of time here. Beta.
I think that's, we are lucky we have one of the largest aquifer in the Indus Basin system. But what we are doing to groundwater, we are already extracting it to the economic limits. We're not replenishing it, and there's no water balancing study that we can do. It's very unfortunate that we have not developed the recharging grounds. If you look into the rainwater harvesting, there are countries capture more than 90% of the rainwater. Our figure is even less than 20. And that is by default, that falls under the irrigated area and rain-fed area. We have put no efforts. Look at all those cities, even the new colonies and things that are coming. Have they prepared any recharging ground? No.
Okay.
Is there any any law? Because we have been talking about this. In Islamabad, a new developing city, has said, why don't you change your building codes? Why don't you make it compulsory that roof water harvesting should be carried out? Look at the roof area of whole of Pakistan. You'll be surprised. It's millions and millions of acres of area.
Thank you, Sardar Sahib.
Million acre.
Thank you very much. You can continue over the...
over an acre will give you over 100,000 liters of water.
Yes, please, your question. Last one. This is last from the floor. Yeah, go ahead.
That's how we manage.
Speak loud enough, yeah.
Basically divided on the two paradigm discourse, that is the water resource management discourse and the integrated water management discourse. And the same, the panel is somehow divided on those lines. I want to ask that whether we have any rubric, policy making decision rubric that we have decided the financial priorities that in which financial priorities we have to invest in that much amount, and what will be the sustainability in terms of water resource sustainability. Does we have any available rubric or indicators to assess any policy and financial priorities? Are any global practice in this regard?
Okay, anybody wants to answer that? I think you should ask this in the policy session. There is a separate policy session. It should have been asked over there, but if anybody wants to respond here, most welcome.
The very quick and short answer is, unfortunately, no. Nobody considers, so that's where, you know, the services which any ecosystem provides, we don't even attach monetary value to that, even if it's a wetland. So considering the fact that, you know, in our development programs and projects, assessing the water, it's very unfortunate, but it's not there.
Okay, this question and answer session comes to an end. I'm going to be requesting Bill to come up here and maybe do a wrap up. Before I do that, I've been cheating a bit, you know, I've been cutting half a minute from every person here and there, so I get another 2 minutes to say that. Okay, I don't know whether you realize that or not, so 2 minutes. Just my take on the first question which was there on the economic side of it. I think if you put water into the real perspective, Pakistan's economy is $305 billion US. That's the economy. About $50 billion comes from agriculture. The rest, about 60% of that, $350 billion or 50% comes from services. Another 20-25% comes from the industry part. There is no thing called industry. All of that industry is only there because it is because of agriculture. You have the sugar mills, you have the others. The magic word and the catch, which we are trying to model and we're trying to work on that, I personally have a very strong conviction and feeling that we can take this to $350 billion from agriculture and water alone. We can completely wipe out poverty in this country. You know, completely wipe out poverty. You get your act together, don't manage as we're doing, put the value of the infrastructure. Infrastructure is a payoff. The highest payoffs you ever get are from hydropower. I mean, I can get a loan, I don't even have to ask Pakistan for that loan. I can get them that money within hours. It's a very paying proposition. But don't give first-class water to third-class agriculture. Unless you get your agriculture right, you do it at a $350 billion, which I'm talking about, don't invest in water. Please, for God's sake, don't invest, no further infrastructure. You have to get a first-class agriculture going to put first-class water. If you do a third-class agriculture, don't invest in that. And with that, Bill, I'm going to ask you to kindly do the final words and wrap it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think this has been a fascinating session. We've touched on many topics way beyond dams, and there's been a vigorous debate. I'm going to start with a bit of gratuitous advertising. This is a recent report from the World Bank on water in Pakistan. There are many copies in the room out the back. It touches on all of these issues, and I don't know that it necessarily, I wouldn't claim it provides all the answers to water for Pakistan. That's going to be a journey of many years, but it does address all these issues in some depth. It explores, pulls together a lot of the literature. I think it gives a balanced view on dams. And so I would commend that to you, and there are some infographics if you want the short version of it. And coming back to the economics that we've talked about, it deals with that in two ways. I guess firstly it looks at this issue of how much do we actually get from the water we use in Pakistan at the moment, and the value of 34 cents per cubic metres for the whole economy. If you look at agriculture by itself, it's about 8 or 9 cents. Very little, and at that level of economic return, it certainly doesn't justify major new infrastructure. Hydropower generation does, but let's separate these and be clear about the economics. So that's one issue. The other issue I wanted, one of the things we did is we used economic modelling and water systems modelling to see whether or not Pakistan could reach upper middle income status by 2047. And the answer, if you improve how you manage water without new storage, is yes. You can provide more water to Karachi, both for the Delta and for Karachi, and you can generate enough food to feed the projected population if you improve how we manage water within the current infrastructure system. It's not to say you don't need new infrastructure, but there are big opportunities to improve how we manage the resource. Come to what we heard today. I started out by sort of giving an overview of some of the global trends and 20 or 30 years of what some might call divisive debate around the negative impacts in dams and an engineering drive and a political drive to build more. We've had a panel here today. We've heard two voices from government who've given us a technical, an engineering, and to some extent a financial view of why we need to build new dams to give things to the people of Pakistan. And then we've had three voices more from the people of Pakistan, wouldn't necessarily say that they collectively would claim to represent all the views of the people of Pakistan, but talking about social justice, talking about environmental outcomes, talking about downstream and upstream riparian issues. And somehow those things that I flagged were important around the debate. We haven't heard those from the government voices at all. I heard nothing about the economic justification. I heard nothing about the social outcomes. I heard nothing about managing environmental impacts. So that what I hear is two parts of a debate talking across each other or above each other, or deafness. People aren't listening to each other here, right? It's not that anyone is saying that dams are evil or bad, but people aren't listening to the other side and having a mature conversation about what the country needs. And that's what I would recommend the government needs to think about here, is to take this forward in a way that everybody owns a solution, have a grown-up conversation about it. And that's not easy to have, but it needs to be tackled seriously. So with that, thank you very much for the time, and look forward to that. Thank you. It was rhetorical.